So good evening once again, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in. My name is Professor Kat McDonald, and I am the Executive Secretary for the Northeast Regional Honors Council, but I am also the Director of the Honors Program at Monroe College, which is located in New York. So what I will just ask folks to do is to mute themselves unless you have a question at some point. And as we go through the session today, if you do have a question, you can, of course, pop on the microphone and ask, or you can place it into the chat. But we do have a nice group here, and I thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. So with a roundtable presentation, roundtables are a very distinct presentation type. So I'm going to share a document on my screen, and then I will also email this to everybody following the session once the recording is available. So with a roundtable, it's very different from a paper presentation. So you're literally going to be sitting at a round table at the conference with attendees who choose to come to your presentation. And at the table, you act as the moderator for your topic. But roundtables are unique because in any given roundtable room, there are multiple tables, okay? So you might have a room where there's another 2 tables happening, or you might actually be in a room this year where there's 4 or 5 other tables happening. So there's basically almost like 5 different presentations and conversations happening simultaneously. But you only need to really worry about what's happening at your table. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that during our session, which is an hour and 15 minutes, so every session is an hour and 15 minutes long, you will basically run through your presentation 2 times, because what we do is at the halfway point, there's a moderator who will ask attendees to switch tables. So this is a very distinct presentation format, as it says here. So, in general, I'm going to give you a sense of what happens, and these 3 bullet points kind of provide an overview. So for the first half an hour, you have like your first group of people. And our guidelines, what we recommend is about 10 minutes of talking time, like where you would go over the research that you conducted or the main tenets of your project. And then there's 20 minutes for interaction, conversation, activity with the people at your table. Because what makes a roundtable presentation unique is the ability for you to have conversation and exchange, right? When you're doing a paper presentation, it's kind of a formal presentation. You're on a panel with other presenters, and then there's just kind of a very brief Q&A. So in this format, we really encourage people to think of ways to engage the people that come to their table. So we can talk more about those things in a minute. All right, but I just kind of want to walk through what'll happen. So that first 30 minutes, you're with your first set of people. Then the moderator, there's going to be a moderator in the room. And at that 30-minute mark, the moderator will give folks a chance to get up and have attendees swap tables. You'll stay at your table, but you might get some new folks that come to sit down. Now, people don't necessarily have to leave, but what we do is we do recommend that people switch around, because within any given roundtable room, the presentations are grouped. So you might, if your presentation happens to be about, let's say, mental health and emotional wellness, there will probably be other presentations in the room that deal with that topic. So that way attendees can see more than one presentation during the session. And ultimately, when that swap happens, you have the opportunity to run through your remarks again and engage in conversation and discussion with the new people who come to your table. So roundtable is very unique. And then there's 15 minutes left at the end. And what happens during that final 15 minutes is the moderator will have the presenters at all tables stand up and just basically kind of give the entire room a quick debrief of what their presentation was about. Because again, if there's more than 2 tables in the room, which in most cases there will be more than 2 tables in a room, Number one, the audience won't get to see all of the presentations. And two, you as a presenter won't get to see or learn about what the other presenters in your grouping talked about. So at the end, we kind of do a debrief to allow that to happen. A couple things to keep in mind. So there's no AV for roundtable presentations. So no computers provided, no projectors, anything like that. You can bring your own stuff for your table. So if you'd like, you can print out handouts. If you want to have a handout that you'd like to give people. When I've mentored students for roundtable presentations, sometimes we've created activities where, again, we might bring a handout with an image on it, pass the image around and have people talk about what that image, makes them feel or what it makes them think about. Other times students have used, a tablet to kind of pass around things. So it's up to you what kind of supply or material or handout that you might like to have. You don't need to have anything, but it's totally up to you. So then the next part of this handout, gives you kind of just the time breakdown. So again, that first 10 minutes, you have your, you give your remarks, right? And then the following 20 minutes is where you have your interaction and activity. Now, you have a 30-minute block there at the beginning. So it's up to you. You might want to start off by asking the audience a question who's sitting at your table and, kind of getting a short conversation started at the beginning of your presentation, and then use that to make your way into your remarks. So the interaction and conversation can kind of take place at any point. But remember, you're in charge. You kind of moderate the flow of everything that's happening at your table. Then after 30 minutes, there will be a switch that's called. And again, for that second 30 minutes, you'll get to run through it again. And then the final 15 minutes, we welcome the presenters from all the different roundtables, ultimately share their findings with the entire group. So as you can see, this is a very unique presentation format, but I think that, if you know how to prepare for it, you will really enjoy it, because it's not so much just about you making a presentation, but also having that interaction and engagement and potential networking with other people at the conference. So I'm going to pause here for a second. I want to check the chat since I'm screen sharing. Are there any questions right now? No, so one of the questions that popped up in the chat is, do we leave the room during the discussion? Not at all. You're there to moderate the discussion. Okay. So for instance, last year I had a student who did a roundtable presentation at our 2022 conference, and her presentation dealt with finding motivation, like where has our motivation gone since the pandemic. And so she had about 10 minutes of remarks, but then she had a list of discussion questions about motivation that she talked with the people at her table about. So she would ask things like, do you guys, how's your motivation these days? Do you do anything to keep motivated? And then my student actually had a couple of, simple activities that she could share, like journaling and having aspirational quotes. So she shared those also with the audience, and everybody kind of gave feedback to one another. So no, you're definitely there the entire time, guiding them in the discussion. Good question. Other questions? It should say lead the room, not leave the room. So there's a typo there. I will have that fixed. I did not make this. So you stay. So I will have that fixed. I apologize for that typo. So the last 15 minutes is more of like a debrief. So if there's, 4 tables in the room, every presenter at each of those tables, so usually there's one presenter unless you have a co-presenter, you'll get a chance to tell the entire room just briefly what your presentation was about and what you talked about with the people at your table. So the last 15 minutes is kind of a round robin around the room where every table gets a chance to kind of debrief for the final 15 minutes. So for the students who are from Gallaudet University, we have been in touch with your honors director, and we do provide interpretation services on site in Pittsburgh. So we will be working on that. We just need to, we're creating our conference schedule right now, and we'll be in touch with your director to make sure that we fit all of your needs. For these virtual sessions, unfortunately, they're free. You know, we're volunteering our Monday evening to be here, so we couldn't provide ASL interpretation for these virtual sessions. I'm glad the transcripts are working fine. So what else? What other questions? Are there other questions that you have about Roundtable? So if you have a co-presenter, what you should do is you should plan your presentation with your co-presenter and, really take, turns during the time that you're sitting with your attendees at the table to, lead the conversation or to make, presenting remarks. And then at the end of the entire session during that final 15-minute debrief, it's up to you if you want to split that time with a co-presenter. It does go by pretty quickly, the last 15 minutes, but really you guys should be able to very, equally share, presentation duties, during the actual roundtable where you're sitting with other folks. So with the question about after one session is done, can we attend other roundtables? So you will be scheduled during one of our 4 presentation sessions throughout the day on Saturday. So usually there's 4 presentation sessions, 2 in the morning and then 2 in the afternoon. And when you're presenting during your session, you're really just going to be at your table. But then throughout the day, you will be able to go and attend other presentations at all the other sessions. So really, during your roundtable presentation, you're kind of tied to your table, the same way that an academic panel presenter would have to stay in the room and listen to all the other panelists on their panel, right, for that one session. So you're kind of in charge of your table for that hour and 15 minutes. So the presentation schedule will be out no later than next week, like the first draft. So that's where you'll have an opportunity if there's any mistakes in your presentation title or typos, or if we've somehow overlooked putting your co-presenters on there, you'll be able to send all of those changes to us after the draft comes out. And any questions that you guys have at any point about the conference can always be directed to our Gmail address, which is Northeast Regional Honors Council at gmail.com. So again, I'm the executive secretary. So I'm the person who's always looking at those emails. So likely if you email us, I'll be the person who gets back to you. But yeah, the first draft of the presentation schedule should be out by next week at the latest. So what I'll do while you guys are thinking of other questions, I just want to show you a couple of other things that maybe you want to keep in mind as we prepare for.
I had a question.
Oh, sure.
So I was asked, I have like a poetry book that I'm creating for the art thing, but then I was asked to do a round table too, but then I was asked a follow-up question about a roundtable versus a panel. Can you explain the difference to me? Because I'm a little confused.
Okay, so this is a particular case for everybody who's in the room, so this probably won't apply to most people. But you did also have an art gallery presentation proposal that was accepted, but you took your art gallery presentation, like the same abstract, and you submitted it to Roundtable. So you could do a Roundtable, but there's also going to be art gallery panels on Saturday where you could go through your poetry, do a reading of sorts, talk to people about the process of creating your poetry, and then there would be questions and answers. But you would be on a panel with other artists who also have submitted for the art gallery. So I had emailed your honors director last week to ask if you prefer to be in a roundtable format or if you'd prefer to be in an art gallery panel format.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had an emergency that week, so I didn't respond until recently. I asked what her opinion was because she had asked me to do a roundtable originally.
So it's your call if you'd like to transfer over to the art panel instead. Just send me an email at that address and just put your full name and presentation name, and I can make that switch still.
I'll talk to her and see what she had in mind when she suggested I do a roundtable. Okay.
Yeah, but with a roundtable, the thing that I would just emphasize is, that interaction, right, is important in a roundtable. So if you kind of want it to be more of a dramatic reading, or you to really kind of focus on your art and really just present your art, I think the art gallery panel would be better for you in that case. But talk to your honors director and please let us know before the end of this week, so that way we can account for any changes in the program early.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy, I see your mic is open. Do you have a question? Okay, she closed the mic. I guess it was open by accident. All right, another question in the chat. Any advice you can give us about the presentation, or what could be the most common mistakes to be able to avoid or work on them? So I think one of the things is you will have a moderator in the room, but you should definitely practice whatever you want to do before you come to the conference. And typically what I do with my students at my institution is we kind of do a final dress rehearsal before we even come to the conference. Sometimes we do it in person, other times we've done it virtually, just so we can kind of test things out and make sure our timings are correct and everything else. So remember, you're going to have 2 30-minute blocks, right, to give your presentation and to interact with people. And the attendees in the room will rotate, right, between the first 30 minutes and then the second 30 minutes. So in some ways, I think, this format is a little bit more forgiving, because by the time you get to your second group of people who have after they've done that rotation, you feel really confident because you've gone through and kind of gone over your material once with folks in the room, but then you get a second try at it. But I do think working on your timing and making sure, that your remarks are organized, right? And then whatever your discussion activity is, or if you want to do some sort of, interactive, thing at your table. I've also seen students bring, depending on what their presentation was about, people have brought like props and games and things to put onto the table to make it really interactive. So really, you could be very creative with this format, but I think whatever your activity or whatever your discussion questions are, they should connect back to your presentation. So that's just one thing I would plan for. But NRHC as an organization is very supportive of our students. Like, we want to see you succeed, and it's not a pressure-filled environment. Everybody's there, who's a student. Many people are giving presentations. For some people, it's going to be their first conference ever. And we're just a really friendly, down-to-earth, supportive environment. So you have nothing to be afraid of. And like I said, with the roundtable format, you tend to have, anywhere between, I would say, probably 5 to 10 people who are sitting with you at your table. So you're not even dealing with like a gigantic audience, but it's very manageable. I'm going to share my screen one more time. So let's see, I'm going to share the whole screen just so I can make sure that I have the right stuff pulled up. So what I wanted to do was show you guys our website. So our website is nrhchonors.com. So all of the information about conference is here on our website, but a couple of things that I want to point out. Now, certain things, if you've looked through the website, like your honors director should be registering you for the conference. That's not something that you should have to do yourself. We also have opportunities to publish. So if you've done a paper, or again, you have poetry or artwork, you can submit your work to Illuminate. So if you were to follow this hyperlink, it goes to illuminate.nrhc.com, which is our journal. So again, I want to encourage folks, our slogan for the NRHC journal is to let your work shine on. So this is definitely something for you to think about. We take submissions all the way up until almost the end of May. So you'll hear us talk about this at the conference. The deadline isn't until after the conference is over, but if you want to think about that now, you can. So there's some of that information on here. But then we also have a variety of awards and scholarships. So if you're a student, whether you're at a 2-year university or a 4-year university, you can submit an application to be considered for the Student of the Year Award. Now, typically the Student of the Year Award requires that also, like, your honors director would write a letter of recommendation about your accomplishments in your honors program. But we typically award 2 students this award, one on the 2-year level and the other on the 4-year level. So they're Student of the Year. We also do something called Honors Professional of the Year. So do you love your honors director or somebody who teaches in your honors program? Do you think that they should be recognized for the work that they do in your honors program? If so, you can nominate them for the Honors Professional of the Year award. And students can definitely write letters of nomination and submit them for, a staff member, an honors director, or an honors faculty person from their institution. So I'd like to just tell you about that one. We also have a publications contest. So if your honors program has a newsletter or a magazine or a journal, you could submit your publication to our publications contest for consideration for an award. Now, with all of these awards, we announce the winners at our Sunday morning award ceremony. So that would be the Sunday morning of the conference. And all of the awardees receive basically a really nice crystal award to recognize them for these achievements. So those are the 3 awards that are still open right now for the conference: Student of the Year, Honors Professional of the Year, and then publication. And as you go through and you click, so I'll put this hyperlink in the chat. But as you click into each of them, you'll get more details about the criteria. They all link to Google Forms. So you submit to a Google form. It's pretty straightforward. But again, if you have any questions about any of the awards that we're still collecting for, you can always email us at that Gmail address. Right now, there is a conference at a glance available. It's a little bit blurry, but you can pretty much read it. So Thursday night, we actually are having an author talk with an author named Brian Broom. And I actually have his book right here because I purchased it because I want to read it. But his memoir is called Punch Me Up to the Gods. And he'll be there Thursday night to give his talk about his book, but then to also, sign copies if you bring your own copy, answer questions. But it's a memoir. And, he grew up in rural Ohio, I think, which is, as a minority. but he's also a gay man. So he kind of goes through in a humorous way, but he has had a very inspiring life. So we have an author talk on Thursday night. Our student representatives are planning a trivia night for after the author talk on Thursday. But if you don't get to conference till Friday, that's okay. Friday is what we call our City as Text Day. So that's where we will set you out to go and explore the city of Pittsburgh. There is information on our website about City as Text. I will show you that in a moment. But we also have a couple of Make a Difference activities that day. One with an organization called the Veterans Breakfast Club, where you could interact with some veterans from the Pittsburgh area. And then there's also another one on Be the Match, which is basically kind of a bone marrow testing opportunity if anybody would be interested in being a donor. But more information will be coming out on that soon. That evening, we have our NRHC Expo and Art Show, and we have our big banquet with a keynote address from journalist Tony Norman. And that night finishes off with the student open mic night. So kind of, you don't have to sign up in advance. Most people just sign up that night. And it's a really fun time for the students to showcase talents and everything. As we've already mentioned, Saturday is going to be presentation day. So like I said, we have 4 different sessions throughout the day. So many of your presentations will be scheduled at some point on Saturday. And that evening ends for students with the red carpet gala. So there will be a DJ, photo booth, lots of hors d'oeuvres, and it's going to be a really nice evening to kind of close out the conference. On Saturday morning, as I already mentioned, we do have one more poster session potentially, and then we have our award ceremony. So our conference at a glance is going to continue to be updated. But if you're interested in looking at anything with City as Text, you'll see when you drop down to the 2023 conference menu, you have all sorts of information about, our keynote speakers, our conference policies, and then here's City as Text. So if you're interested in kind of getting a sense for some of the things that are out there to see in Pittsburgh, we have a variety of different strands. And just so I'll just mention this today, City as Text is really meant to be self-guided. So, you would explore the city, with friends from your honors program, with maybe your honors director, and anything that you want to do in the city. Like if you want to stop into one of the art museums, for instance, like those admission costs are for each participant. Like we at the conference can't pay for. We don't have the resources as a small nonprofit organization to provide admission to all of the things that we suggest. So they really are suggestions only. But if you know something that you'd like to do, I always tell my students, like, let me know if there's something you want to do. And if it requires any funding, I can try and get the funding. So if you know that there's something that you might like to do, talk to your honors director before heading out to Pittsburgh. So we put all this information up on our website, just so you guys can have a sense of what to expect. But those are the only other things that I thought that I could share with you guys this evening, outside of just talking a little bit about doing your presentation. So it's been about half an hour. And again, I wanted to keep this tight and be mindful of everybody's time, but I can take any other questions, comments, or concerns before we wrap up our session tonight.
I have a question for the excuse me, for the people who live in Pittsburgh and won't be needing a room. Does the registration fee change, or it just comes with the room?
No, so that's a totally separate fee. So conference registration is $325 per person, and that includes, that accounts for some of our expenses in terms of the conference space. We do provide several meals. So we definitely provide breakfast on Saturday morning and Sunday morning. On Saturday, we also provide lunch. Friday night, we provide a seated dinner. And then sometimes we provide breakfast on Friday, but I'm not sure if we're doing that yet. And there is going to be food, like I said, at the student party on Saturday night. So your registration fee also includes like all of the food that we provide at the conference. If you're an institution that requires rooms at the conference hotel, our conference rooms are $179 per night. So that's a separate and apart fee. So like registration is almost like your ticket just to conference events. And then the hotel is like a separate reservation that your honors directors usually make.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So our student representatives have not, necessarily announced what that is yet. The student reps will be providing you guys with more details through emails over the coming weeks. But I believe the student reps for the student gala have mentioned that they'd like to do like a semi-formal theme, but it's really whatever you want to wear. It's a red carpet themed event. So, but more to come on dress code for sure, I'm sure. And yes, the roundtable format, I will make sure that any of the typos that we caught in there are fixed, and I will email it out to the roundtable presenters once this recording is posted onto our YouTube channel. Other questions? All right, well, if there aren't other questions at this point, I want to thank you guys for joining me this evening. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Pittsburgh in a few weeks. And if you ever have questions about anything conference related, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at our Gmail. So again, I'll just pop that into the chat. It's Northeast Regional Honors Council at gmail.com. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Do keep an eye on your email from our student representatives, because they will send out more information about student events and other conference planning tips. But thank you guys so much for joining me. Good luck as you continue to prepare your presentations, your roundtable presentations, and we will see you in a few weeks. Have a great night, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording here.